Jameis with, but how different has it been with no Drew Brees around?
Yeah, I mean it's a significant difference. I'm going in my fifth year, and every year has been with Drew, and so it's it's a significant difference. I think we've relied on him for so much. You know, his expertise, his just level of professionalism, and everything is has just been so good for so long. Um, so I think it's taking everything that you've learned from him and trying to replicate it and make it fit for you and what we have going on now.
How do you sort of put your own stamp on what you learned from him?
Well, I think that's still kind of to be determined. I think he did it at such a high level in everything that he did. So I would say I learned so much from him, but the things that like I learned from him were more of just being able to observe the way that he approached every day, every game, um, more so than the things that we had conversations about. Although that was obviously very enlightening as well. But obviously, Drew played the position different than I'll play it, different than other people played it. So I think really what stands out to me is the way that he approached each day, the way that he approached each snap, like everything was so deliberate. And so I would say that is what sticks out in my mind. And then really, just playing the position the way that you play
Does
it.
does it affect you guys when Coach Payton names who the starter is, whether it's July or August? I was reading a Bleacher Report article that was saying the later it happens, it affected the offense. Just from your experience in different quarterback battles, does it affect the entire offense as a whole when the starter is named in terms of timing?
Well, I think you're obviously trying to tailor an offense towards specific skill sets or talents, and so I think the sooner that the quicker you can tailor it. And I would say with that being said, our core is going to be the same. I look at the last four games that I was playing last season, and we did some things differently, and some things were taken out of the offense, some things were added, and but the core is all the same. So as you go to training camp, as you approach all these days, you're really trying to hone in on the fundamentals. Make sure that we kind of have our bread and butter, and that's the stuff that we're going to be really good at. So I don't think that stuff ever changes depending on who's playing.
Now that you have a long view of it, now that you have a long view from those four games, is there anything from that period where you say, all right, this is what I need to do, and that's what you worked on this offseason?
Yeah, I mean I would say it's a weekly progression. So you watch the film after a game and you see things that you could have done better, and so as you go into the next week, you try to implement those things. And um, I would say that is a very natural progression as a quarterback. And that has been no different this offseason as it was last offseason. As we've talked about before, the emphasis this year is I've really been able to tailor all my workouts and everything to just being a quarterback where I've structured things differently. Just knowing and feeling like I won't have to take on um, as much as I did last year. So that's been the emphasis, but the mindset of getting better every day and improving on what you've done in the past, that hasn't changed.
Is there anything specific that you honed in on?
There are some things that specific to kind of our offense, things that I would have done differently with some of my footwork, um, some decision making, based on coverage and stuff like that, that I certainly would have done differently in the moment, and things that I've taken note of. So the footwork stuff has been an easy thing to focus on this off season, and there are other things that I'll continue to work on.
How do you feel like that footwork affected you? Like, how did it? Why did you feel like you needed to change it?
I think that you know I think every quarterback would tell you that your feet should take you to where the ball goes, and um, I think as you go throw routes on air, um, you're just trying to get work in, but then you get into a game and you're trying to replicate a rush and everything else. And so those are the things that I'm applying. I think that I could have sped some things up, based on some routes and some concepts where maybe I was a little bit late on a throw, but I felt like it was because my feet weren't ready to deliver the ball. So without getting too specific, I would say that would be an easy answer.
Hey, Taysom, you mentioned tailoring an offense to the quarterback. Y'all are doing obviously more classroom stuff than on field work during the mini camp. Have you and Sean and Pete talked about, or are there packages of tailoring things more towards your skill set this offseason than obviously at any time before?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think the emphasis this offseason really has been a weight room specific deal, to where we have been out on the field with the receivers, the running backs, tight ends, and we're throwing routes that we know we're going to install. But we really haven't had a ton of contact with the coaching staff this offseason. I know that we've, historically here, we've kind of had conversations about the RPO game. And we're continuing to having some conversations that way. But, we really haven't had a ton of time with the staff to have a ton of those conversations.
Hey, Taysom, were you able to work out with any of your teammates outside the facility this offseason? And if so, did that kind of help with the mindset of going into this year as a quarterback versus your previous, kind of do everything position?
I would say the first time that I was around a group of guys was about a month ago, and it was down in New Orleans. And then to answer your question, like absolutely, as we're tailoring these workouts, a lot of our field work became very specific to our positions, and so we tailored all of that, specifically to our position group, and I was throwing, and so again, everything was tailored, as a quarterback.
Regardless of who wins the competition, how much is y'all's offensive line really an asset to the passing game, just all the leadership and the veterans you guys have there?
Yeah, ever since I've been here, our O-line has been one of the best in the NFL, and certainly as a quarterback, you like to see an organization commit to having a good O-line, and we've had great coaches and we've had great personnel there. And as you look forward to this season, as you mentioned, the personnel is not changing, and they've reinforced that. And those guys, everything starts up there. If you can't protect the QB, you can't get a ball off, or you can't run the ball, like you can't do anything. And so everything starts there, and they've done a great job of focusing on that historically.
How is your
Taysom, you mentioned working on less this season, potentially, obviously based on what happens with the outcome of the quarterback competition. But have you been given an indication that regardless of who wins the quarterback competition, that you might be doing less in other positions this year?
I haven't had any of those conversations. The conversation has been, as we finished last offseason, was come in ready to compete and play as well as you can at quarterback, and that's been the extent of the conversation.
How is your friendship or relationship with Jameis? Obviously, you were very close with Drew, you and your families. Not that you have to be close with the guy you're competing with, but I assume you're friends and have a good relationship. Sean talks about the room. How is your relationship, friendship with Jameis as you all compete for this job?
It's great. I love being around Jameis. Jameis is a guy that works really hard. He cares a lot about his craft, and he focuses and works really hard on it. And he's a fun guy to have around. And so this is not, I think there's obviously a lot of conversation here about this competition and everything else, but I'm super supportive to him, and I've felt nothing but support from him as well, and that goes back to last year when I was playing. Jameis was super supportive. He and I had a lot of conversations, and through that process, and he was great through that whole thing. So that has not changed, and he's become a really good friend.
Knock on wood, having a full season of Michael Thomas, if he can stay healthy, how much does that help the offense as a whole? Obviously Drew Brees got a lot of credit for, things that have happened, but obviously he's arguably the best receiver in the league. So how much does that help the offense, having a healthy Michael Thomas?
Yeah, I mean, you just can't. Mike T is one of the most unique players I've ever been around, and having him on the field, like, a defense has to account for him on every single play, and so it just creates opportunities for other guys, creates opportunities for me as a quarterback, for the other skilled players out there, and then as you talk about from the perspective of quarterback, if you get stuck or there's indecision on what's going on, that if you give Mike T a catchable ball, one, he's going to catch it. He's going to do everything he can to compete for it. And he just, I can't say enough good things about him and what he means to us offensively.
Hey, Taysom, I know you haven't spent a lot of time with him, but what have you sort of seen with Ian Book so far?
I like him. I think Ian, he came in here with the right mindset, the right approach. I think he's eager to learn and eager to get on the field, and obviously played at an organization where he won a lot of football games, which is really important as you look at the legacy here in New Orleans. Like, we've been winning a lot of football games, and we certainly don't want that to change, and that's the mindset. So I like him. I think he does some things really well. I think he's got good feet, throws a good ball, and all that stuff. But I think he really has a really good mindset coming in here as a rookie.
With respect to Drew, and I know you guys aren't trying to replace anything he did or erase it or anything like that, but like, is there an element of like establishing I don't want to say a new culture, but like a different way of doing things that fit you? Is it important to kind of turn the page a little bit and set things up so it's your way of doing things or James's way of doing things?
Yeah,
is there any of that going on?
Yeah, I think that's fair. And I would say you kind of have to do that every year, whether the quarterback's the same or the quarterback's different. You kind of have to find out who you are as a team and then define that process and what it's going to look like. But Drew had a process that worked for him. And again, we're all different players. We all have different ways of learning and thinking and everything else. And so I do think it's important to figure out what that process is for each player, figure out what that process is for me, what it is for other guys in the locker room. And the chances of it looking identical to what it was like when Drew was here is probably not going to happen. Good. Thanks, guys.